Today, guys, we're going to be looking at Alphabet's AI Endgame. I made a comprehensive report to cover everything I've been talking about, and hopefully everyone will fully understand after this report. I'm trying to make it crystal clear why Alphabet will likely be a monopoly in the West. And so let's go ahead and get started. First thing first, let's just talk about the technology stack, and that is their biggest moat. Now, I talk about technology stacks all the time, but I just want to put out there that Frontier Labs, they don't have the advantage of having a stack. And that's because they're new. So when you're a Frontier AI lab such as OpenAI, Claude, DeepSeek, Perplexity, your main goal is to just get a few of your products and start building a user base from there, right? You're just trying to get your main products into the hands of users. Alphabet doesn't have that disadvantage. They have been around for decades and have an entire stack. Now, when you talk about technology stacks, these vary, and you can say some of them are horizontally integrated and vertically integrated. But for Alphabet, what their stack looks like is basically they have apps, then they have the gatekeeper to the apps, then they have the infrastructure under the apps, and then of course in the infrastructure they have the chips that power the infrastructure. And so if we start at the top part of this, they have 9 apps with 1 billion plus users. Yes, that's 9 apps across Android, iOS, Chrome, etc., etc. Search, YouTube, and Maps act as high-frequency habit loops for AI interactions. What does that mean? The apps that they have a ton of high-frequency interaction, and now Alphabet's able to sprinkle AI throughout that loop. Many of you might say, I'm never going to use an AI feature, and that's fine. Alphabet's okay with that because with 1 billion plus users on each of these apps, they know that many people are, okay? But as if that wasn't already enough, they secure their competitive advantage by controlling the gatekeepers to these apps, i.e. they have the largest mobile operating system in the entire world. Android's native integration with AI ensures day one distribution of features to billions of global devices. Nobody else outside of perhaps Huawei has this feature in the world. Apple doesn't because they don't really have anything for AI. But Google has over 2 billion active Android devices that they can push out AI features to anytime they want. In addition to that, they have an absolute worldwide monopoly with their web browser, Chrome, and it's not even close. Chrome provides a direct pipeline for AI-infused web experience and search dominance. Okay, so those are your 2 gatekeepers. But now we look at, we look at the infrastructure that powers that, and Google has the fastest growing cloud right now. 63% growth driven by the commercial capture of enterprise AI infrastructure. Sundar Pichai said on their earnings report that they had 800% growth in AI-related revenue in the cloud. And he attributed this to the fact that they are the only provider in the West that has the entire stack for the cloud. He's referencing a different stack, but it's true that they have that entire stack too, which would be they have the models, they have the apps, they have the infrastructure, and they have the TPUs. So just think of it as it's also related to this stack, but it branches off a little bit. They also have the best-in-class TPUs. I mean, what an advantage that they already have with these other 4 parts. And then on top of that, they literally have the best AI chips in the world. And you might say, I thought Jensen Huang had the best AI chips in the world. He has the best readily available AI chips. Alphabet's chips, as of right now, are still only available in the cloud, though apparently they are going to be shipping to some consumers for use in their own data warehouses by the end of the year. But anyways, they're custom silicone VAI optimized for high efficiency inferencing at absolutely massive scales. What does that mean? Alphabet not only doesn't have to pay the Jensen tax, but their chips are already more efficient. They can serve AI cheaper than everybody else. And that leads to the subsidization trap, okay? All these frontier AI labs, they are funding Alphabet. They are funding their competitors, okay? Involuntary hardware subsidies. Frontier labs such as OpenAI and Anthropic are forced into a strategic paradox where their growth fuels Alphabet's infrastructure engine. Let me tell you, I bet Sam Altman and the Anthropic CEO, they really don't want to have to partner with Google. They would probably rather partner with Amazon or Microsoft because they know that every single dollar they give to Google, Google can shove right back into Gemini. But they have to partner with Google because they don't want to pay the 70% NVIDIA tax. And because Google has the best chips out there. So they have to go ahead and subsidize Google. Labs rent compute from Google Cloud to train and serve their frontier models. Rental margins fund Alphabet's next-gen TPU development. Alphabet uses this subsidized hardware to deploy Gemma and Gemini at lower cost to serve, thus directly competing with their competitors and driving down margins. I mean, it's just a vicious cycle. The strategic insight here, every dollar spent on cloud tokens by a competitor becomes a capital expenditure for Alphabet's proprietary AI advantage, right? I mean, it's absolutely sickening. The fracture with tokens, renting versus owning. AI labs, you'll hear this often, the closed source. The simple fact is that they have to be closed source. Pure play labs such as OpenAI and Anthropic are trapped in a token rental model. They don't have any other way to make money. Their survival depends on high API margins and $20 a month subscriptions. And if you believe Anthropic's CFO, right, even the $20 a month isn't going to cut it anymore. They need $100 to $200 a month subscriptions. But this is in contrast to Google, which can play into closed tier, but also can play into open tier. And that's because of their infrastructure. Alphabet can go ahead and use open weights to commoditize the intelligence tier. Now, over the past year, I have been saying this, repeating this over and over. Alphabet and China are absolutely fine with commoditizing AI. I've gotten so much pushback from it. Okay, but this is the absolute truth, right? Because for Alphabet, it doesn't put the pressure on them. It puts the pressure on their competitors. Okay, they capture value at the hardware and cloud bedrock instead of the token. So Alphabet's fine capturing money at the token, but they're also fine saying, okay, we're going to go ahead, release open weights, and those open weights are likely going to run on our cloud, and we're just going to capture the money there. And that's where they're leveraging their stack. And so this is part of the dual tier strategic dominance that I keep talking about. They're protecting their ecosystem. They can release Gemma, right? Gemma 4, an absolutely amazing model, able to compete with frontier models. And Alphabet, meanwhile, is blocking rivals from becoming the Western standard. And Alphabet is serving the premium enterprise market with Gemini, their frontier API. So what does this mean exactly? Well, remember when Jensen Huang said whoever controls the standards essentially controls the market? Alphabet is blocking anybody else from controlling the standards. I'm sure they would love to control the standards, but by releasing high quality open source weights, open weight models like Gemma 4, at the very least, what they're doing is making sure that they're in the standards conversation, and that's all they need. It prevents anybody else from becoming the Western standard. And in the meantime, they can say, okay, we can play both games. We have our premium frontier API model, Gemini, and we're going to serve that to the premium enterprise market. So they can play both ends of the game. And the openness of Gemma, many people have been commenting. I don't think they understand what open source is. Gemma is about as open as it gets. Without getting too technical and talking about Richard Stallman, a guy who literally in a video ate toe jam, okay, but has a very unique view of open source. So besides someone like that, the Apache 2.0 licensing is probably, I would say, the most open license out there. Now, we can argue about this in the comments down below, but I think it is because with the Apache 2.0 license, I am allowed to take it, use it, not have to release my changes back to the community, and I can compete with you directly with it, and I can even close it off. I can do what I want with it. It makes it great for commercial purposes. Now, I know a lot of diehards, again, the Stallmanites, they're going to say, no, unless you release left and have to give your stuff back, it's not truly open. I disagree. But the simple fact is that no matter what you have to say, the Apache 2.0 licensee is extremely permissive. Again, it allows total commercial freedom for developers. And what does that do? It encourages mass adoption. A lot of people won't use the most open by Richard Stallman libraries because any changes they make to it, they have to give back. And if you're going to do that, then basically you can't really run a business. It becomes very hard because you're going to build something with this and then you have to release everything that you built along with it. And so someone else can just copy your product and sell it, right? So the strategic importance here is that they're saying, hey, developers, use this. It's open. If you want, you can compete with us. Every developer building on Gemma, remember, is building on Google's technical standards, okay? So remember where I was just talking about standards? So they're telling these developers, use Gemma, compete with us. Okay, I'm going to use Gemma. I'm going to compete with you. Guess what I'm doing? I'm using Google standards. So this is to their benefit, right? And this inevitably creates an irreversible gravity towards Google Cloud. Why? Because Gemma 4, of course, is going to run best on Google's TPUs. And Google didn't just start this. A lot of people think that Google has no open source heritage. Google is literally the single largest contributor out of any entity to open source in history. 2014, they released TensorFlow. This is the library that industrialized AI. Alphabet defined the framework for a decade of deep learning research. In 2017, Attention is All You Need, the foundational paper that invented the transformer. Google literally wrote the blueprint for Gen AI. Okay? And people are saying there is no money in AI. Well, here's the commercial capture. $20 billion in quarterly cloud revenue. The model is the bait. The infrastructure is the business. Google captures the value of enterprise AI workloads by owning the data center, not just the model weights. So remember what I was saying here. I'm going to try to draw some of these together here. Maybe I should go one more slide before I do. Yeah, I'll go one more slide. This slide's got it. Payoff number 2, competitive denial. Blocking rivals. Free frontier level models such as Gemma 4 prevent Chinese labs or small startups from becoming the default Western standard. So a lot of Chinese firms are actually making inroads into Western companies. And by releasing Gemma 4, Google is just making sure that nobody else becomes the standard. Remember, again, they don't have to become the standard themselves. They just got to ensure that nobody else becomes a standard. And by doing that, right, all you got to do is stay competitive. You don't have to be the best every time. You just got to stay competitive. And by doing that, they're able to have a margin squeeze. Aggressive pricing and free models drive down the cost of AI, destroying the business model of pure play AI labs, right? So every time that you have somebody from China release open source, every time Google releases open source, Google's smiling because this drives down the margins that OpenAI and Anthropic face, right? So this really hurts these pure play AI labs, but it doesn't hurt Alphabet, okay? And their ecosystem gravity, integrating AI into Workspace and Android makes it too sticky to leave. So what this simply means is that, as we know from Apple and Google, you essentially start building these walled gardens. You put features in people's hands that they get so used to and so accustomed to that it becomes hard for them to leave your ecosystem. And with Google integrating AI into Workspace, into Android, into these 1 billion plus user apps, they're creating this feeling, right, that if people leave, they're going to notice it and they're not going to like it. And so they're creating a walled garden that becomes very hard to leave. So now remember, Google is, again, they can play both games. They can play the API game and make money by the token, but they also can extract value on every single part of their stack. And their rivals cannot do that, right? And OpenAI or Claude or Perplexity can't do that. So this is just portfolio reinforcement. The long games. Today's developers build on Google's AI stack. Tomorrow, those same developers become CTOs, making multi-million-dollar cloud procurement decisions. By winning the mindshare of builders today, Alphabet guarantees the revenue of the enterprise tomorrow, right? This is why Apple worked so hard back in the day to get iPads into the hands of all these young kids, because then they knew they would have an Apple user likely for life. Google's doing the same thing. They're saying, oh, here, there's all these young guys, young girls, young whatever, he, she's, they, thems coming out, and they're developers and they're, we're going to give them this model. It's free. They can compete against us. We're going to give them cloud credit, and they end up having a great experience. And then later on, they become important people at important companies. They need to pick their infrastructure. And, it's very likely that they'll pick Google. They'll remember that a good experience that they had. Google Cloud growth acceleration. I'm just showing this to you because people tell me all the time there is no money in AI. This is virtually, the last few years is purely AI driven. The inference edge, I have a mistake here. This is actually the Blackwell 200 in the cloud. The Google TPU VAI, 95% optimization rate, passes the 75% standard of the Blackwell 200 and the AWS Inferentia 2, which is a proprietary model here. Okay, so Alphabet has the best silicon when it comes to performance per watt for inferencing loads. Okay, and then most importantly, out of everything I've said, I've told you about how Google can play both strategies. I've told you how Google is subsidized, right? And I'm going to get to the part that all of you are going to hate, but it's true. Okay, the billion user feedback loop. The biggest reason that Google does so well is that they are an information company. And so with 9 apps over 1 billion users, some of them with multi-billion users, each of these apps are providing an unparalleled amount of data refinery for model training and user testing. Now, Google has closed off YouTube to all these other labs. I think they can pay to get into YouTube. But just think about YouTube alone. Think about what would be more important than I believe it's billions of hours of videos uploaded to YouTube. Okay, for training these AI models. And this is in Google's back pocket. Search intent data is in Google's back pocket. Productivity workspace. They're getting all of this information and they're able to use this billion user feedback loop and feed it back into their AIs to refine it and make it even better. Okay, this is probably Google's number one advantage. This is what they are best at. They also have infrastructure endurance. Pure play AI labs, as I pointed out, are sprinting for survival. They're struggling, at all times. They have to keep raising more and more funds. They're pulling features. Alphabet, meanwhile, is building a multi-generational fortress. Their ability to subsidize AI innovation with advertising revenue while capturing the cloud market represents a structural advantage that no other company in AI race can match. So remember what I keep telling you? Alphabet makes so much money off of everything else, right? They're not in the same position as these guys. They are cash machines. They can afford this infrastructure build out, no problem. In fact, they can afford it so easily that they're like, hey, we're going to increase our dividend for absolutely no reason at the last earnings meeting. That's the new AI economy. It's Alphabet's playbook for global dominance. I don't want to really put global. It's mainly the West. And the reason that it's mainly the West is that everything I said here applies to Huawei and or Alibaba in the East. Now, the thing about Huawei is that they haven't stepped into the consumer-facing AI market yet. I know they have Celia and they have Pangu, but Pangu, I think they clearly stated Pangu 3.0 was an industrial AI, and Celia is just more like an AI assistant. But understand, even in China, if you're laughing at Americans like, hey, you guys are going to get another monopoly. Well, you might too. Now, I don't know how your law works there for antitrust, but the simple fact is that DeepSeek, Kimi, all of these Chinese AI frontier labs, they face the exact same issues with Huawei if Huawei chooses to go ahead and start focusing on consumer AI, right? 1, they're buying Huawei's chips. 2, they're in Huawei's cloud. 3, they don't have the ecosystem Huawei does, i.e. Huawei can deploy AI features to 1 billion users with 1 update. They can't. Huawei has all types of apps on their mobile and their laptop and desktop Harmony operating system, which they can just sprinkle AI through. DeepSeek cannot do that. Okay, so Huawei has this tremendous advantage. They actually have a bigger advantage than Alibaba does. And so it's just kind of like, are they going to do it or not? If they choose to do it though, right? it's pretty much over for all these frontier AI labs in China, unless the government steps in. Again, I don't know what antitrust laws are like over there. But even if Huawei doesn't, let's say that Huawei is like, nope, we're going to focus on industry. We'll use DeepSeek to power the AI features on our phones. Even if they choose to do that, frontier AI labs are still under threat from Alibaba, which has the largest cloud in China, which has an entire stack, which makes billions of dollars outside of AI and can subsidize Quinn and things like that. So no matter where you are in the world, frontier AI labs, I'm not telling you to shed a tear for them, okay? All these guys are making tons, they're not making tons of money, but the people who run them are making money because, they're whatever, they just make money. But anyways, the simple fact is that I just don't see how these frontier AI labs last too long, okay? It's more than likely that, 5-7 years in, they're going to be rolling into these larger companies. That's just my view. Let me know what you think about this down below. All of you out there have a great day.